Hello everybody. Lately in the Marvel Rivals community, there's been a growing argument about which role is the easiest, and it's been causing a divide in the player base. I've played Overwatch since the Overwatch 1 beta, and I've been playing Rivals since its beta, and I enjoy playing every role in the game. I'm going to go into it in more detail, but my take on this is simply, Vanguard is the hardest role to play, but it's the easiest role to carry your team on. While Strategist is the easiest to play, but the hardest to carry your team on. And Duelists are neither the easiest nor the hardest, they just have the most freedom in a match. And obviously there's some exceptions to this in each role, as there's some characters that are way easier than the average, and some that are way harder than the average.
Pretty sure those are bad guys.
I'm going to start off with Vanguard, and I'll explain why they're harder. You basically have to balance taking space and holding it. And like, what I mean by balance is like certain characters are way better at doing one than the other with tanks. Like Cap and Venom are great at taking space. They're not very good at like holding it. And Mag and Strange are the opposite. They're great at holding space, but it's a lot more difficult to take the space. And as you kind of learn the how to tank and tanking more, you find the sweet spot for how to take and hold space, and that's the mark of a good tank.
I'm not a vengeful person.
And then also you need to kind of be tracking ults in the game, like, and knowing what ults are going to be thrown at your team, how you'd be able to protect from those ults, and then also how to use your ult on the enemy team, because a lot of the tank ults can get a lot of value if you track properly and use them at the right times. And you also need to be watching the enemy team's characters. See, okay, are they going to be just trying to bully through my front line more? Or are they going to be trying to dive my back line? And how much peel can I afford to give? But once you do find that balance on tank, you can control a lobby so easily. And then the easiest to carry on, because once you understand that, you have the most health in the game. Your supports are going to be giving you the most resources out of anyone on your team. And like I mentioned earlier, your ultimates are very good, a few of which can even counter support ults. And almost all of them can force out a support ult somewhat easily. I'm going to go into Strategist next, but to preface it, I'm going to remind everybody that in Hero Shooters, you do not get to see the enemy's health bar until you've damaged them. Alright? And so when you're trying to figure out who to go in on, especially on characters like Spider-Man where your primary fire is limited, you kind of need to pick and choose your targets before you've damaged them. So you kind of need to see who's out of position, who's going to be an easier person for me to fight, and who's going to be tougher. You know, and even, okay, if they have a Luna Snow and a Jeff, you know, which support's going to be easier for me to kill? You know, like if one's healing the other, who can I get the pick on? You kind of got to assess that a lot more often when you're DPSing. Especially when you're not on like a Punisher or something. So you kind of have to rely on, and any thing related to low health, you're either having to play a character who can just damage everybody, and not a lot of characters have tons of movement if they have the ability to damage everybody from range. So you kind of need to rely on callouts more to know who on the enemy team is lower health. And while that's all still true, like if you're playing Strategist and DPSing with Strategist, but what makes Strategist so easy to play is that healing's very essential to winning in this game. And you can see your entire team's health bars 24/7. And even and building onto that point, not only can you see their health bars 24/7, but you get an indicator when they're critical. And the ping system in this game is not very good for pinging enemies. So like if I ping somebody on the other team who's low, that ping might not even ping them half the time. Certainly not ping them if they're low. But people spam all the time when they need healing, you know? Not that it's the best ping in the world, but it's, you get some information even if people aren't talking, you know? And then also, if you look at the support's ultimates in this game, or the strategist ultimates, if you will. Most of them is just a giant radius of healing, and it's very hard to kill through them. And there's not very many ults in the game, or not very many abilities in the game that can kill through them, and most of them are ultimates. And the thing about support ults is, even if you like misuse the ult, you don't look at tracking, you don't look at anything, you're not paying attention to whatever's going on in the enemy team, you can still get value out of that ult, because all you have to do is hold W with your team, and you're just going to walk over the enemy team, be able to play super aggressive, not have to worry about your positioning as much, because you're in an ult that's giving you a lot of freedom, you know? That's another reason why it's a little bit easier on support. Now, they're the hardest role to carry your team on, because you don't have, like, great offensive capabilities. And if you are playing a support that does have great offensive capabilities, their movement is usually hindered for it. Like if you look at Adam Warlock, obviously he has a ton of damage, literally no movement at all, least out of any support. You know, like, and that was the same. Mantis has pretty good damage, but her movement she is barely a speed boost. You know, like they severely nerfed it because she was ridiculously strong. She didn't have it. Like the best support who has the most movement is Jeff, and he has very little damage. So Jeff, I would say Jeff is one of the easier supports to carry on because you can just live in the enemy backline, especially if you're running a triple support now. That's more of an outlier situation going on there because his healing, you can't really heal bot with him compared to other supports because he just loses on the DPS. They're not the hardest or the easiest really. Like you can kind of get baseline value just like the supports by just holding left click on the enemy tanks, but that's really only with some characters, like Hela, Bucky, Punisher, stuff like that. And then the more risky characters you play with on DPS, you go and flank, you want to dive, and you might be able, you're putting yourself very out of position, you're going to get no help from your team, you can try and get a pick, you know, you can try and get a kill, and that's going to make a huge advantage on your team, even if you die for the kill. Like, you're giving your team a big advantage, especially if it's a support player. And what I mean when I say, like, DPS have more freedom than anyone else is, say you're playing a game and they have 2 tanks, you don't really have any tanks, or your tanks are not helping out. You're going to feel the pressure the enemy tanks are putting on you. They're going to be walking forward, very little ways to kind of push them back. Like, especially if they have shields. Like, even if they don't have shields, the only way to really push them back is to go like Hela or Bucky or Hawkeye and just tap their heads and pressure them back with damage, you know?
I've got something to prove.
And then if you don't have a strategist on your team, you're going to feel it the longer that fight gets drawn out. Your health's just going to get whittled down until you have no more, and you're going to lose that fight. But when you have like a DPS missing, or DPS going on a really long flank, or just hiding, waiting it for their engage, like you don't really notice it as much. You know, your tanks can hold the space. It's going to be a lot harder to take the space when you don't have DPS putting that pressure, but you can still hold space pretty well. But like you don't feel a missing DPS nearly as much or nearly as quickly as the other two. All 3 roles obviously have characters in them that are outliers to skill requirement. You know, like some easier characters in the roles would be like the Thing or Wanda or Cloak, and some harder ones would be like Hulk, Spidey, and Warlock. But as a general rule, the tanks hardest to play, easiest to carry. Sports are easiest to play, hardest to carry. And none of this is to mean that if you play support, you're a worse player, or if you play tank, you're a better player. You know, and I don't personally think anybody should be playing just one role. Every role has their challenges, and understanding all 3 roles and which characters go well together, who can cover each other's disadvantages, that's going to make them a good team and a good player. So that's kind of my whole take on the easiest role thing. Before I go, I do have another tip to share if anyone's interested. And it's how you can get more healing onto you from your strategist. Like if you're ever playing a DPS and you feel like they're just not healing you enough, this may be why, and this will definitely help you. And it's going to be if you go into your settings and you go to either the keyboard tab or the controller tab, depending on what you use, there's the communications tab underneath that. And you can change the ping wheel from the default 4 with just your basic callouts to an 8. And there's a few different things you can put on there to help out. The best one by far is the thank you. If instead of when you're low, you go, I need healing, I need healing, I need healing, you just go, I need healing, thank you. And you make sure to stand still for your supports, you know. And if you're behind your support, by the way, like this, they're not going to be looking around at you. No matter what, supports are never going to be looking around at you. If you're behind a support, you're going to need to call out to them and say, hey, I'm behind you. But if you're like right next to them, if you're kind of in front of them, and you know, you can, then if you ping, I need healing, thank you, they'll heal you so much faster than if you just ping, I need healing, I need healing, I need healing. Especially when you're not critical, you're just kind of wanting to get topped off. This helps a lot with that, because then they'll just turn to you, give you a couple shots real quick, go back to fighting. And then one more ping that you can put on, I actually just found about this one recently, is it's the status one. So when you ping the status wheel, it specifically calls out what percentage of your health you're at. So like if you're at 25 health, it'll go, oh, 10% health. You know, if you're a squishy, of course. So you're kind of informing them, hey, I need healing, I'm just wanting to get topped off. Or hey, I need healing, I'm almost dead. And you want to say thank you, of course. I think it limits you to 3 pings. So like if you don't want to do all 3, I would just go with healing, thank you. And that concludes this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And let me know if there's anything else you want to make a video about.